Walk with me through the cellar door. A storm is coming, Francis. A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome back to another Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We have a pretty amazing show in for you, but I think I say that every time. I don't know, folks. It feels pretty amazing to me. It feels pretty amazing to you, hopefully. And we will be here for the next hour and a half discussing a couple of different topics. Tonight, the big topic, though, is really going to be Palestine and Israel and looking at their conflict that's happening right now. Especially because as Americans, we seem to be this like big pro, Israel nation, we got to love Israel. And then it's like, well, what about Palestine? And then somebody just wonders why they continue to fight over this holy land and how maybe we can actually change that tide. We're also going to take a quick look at a recent poll and research study that showed younger voters push Biden over the edge. And while that's probably not surprising in any way, shape, or form, it's really a amazing tactic because it demonstrates the fact that we do need to get out there and vote, and we do need to start catering and courting some of these younger voters. And if we don't do that, we are not going to succeed. And we're also going to talk about the Kentucky State Police. I'm just going to leave it at that for a second because I'm going to bring my co-hosts, my friends, Mr. Hansel, the engineer, and Mr. Buddy, the elf. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hola, mi amigos. Man, you got those buttons all figured out yet?
I don't think Keith.
How is it going, everyone?
We've only been doing this for 9 months.
Oh,
Jesus
Jesus
Come
Christ.
on, buddy.
Yeah.
I thought I was out of the stream and forgot that I had actually just muted myself. So it's okay. I'm just living up to the fact that I am a blonde by nature. So.
All right. How are you all?
Well, it snowed yesterday. It snowed. I had to cut my sunshades down again because it snowed in Ohio on Mother's Day, May 9th, because why not? Really, why not? So I decided I'm not putting the sunshades up in my backyard again until 4th of July because it'll snow the day I put them up. I just, there's no way. I don't understand how and what. My garden is never going to go in. I'm going to put it in September when it finally dries out. That's all I know. I'm just so pessimistic about the weather this year. So yeah. Cleveland, nah,
so
that's basically
we
what
were
I've
the
got
only
going on.
ones who got snow yesterday. Yay!
Which is funny. We didn't get snow in Michigan. We sat outside on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
My mom came over. We sat on the porch, had some coffee. It was kind of crazy. Like I thought it was. I never even thought about snow. I'll be honest.
No, when I was a kid, we were lucky to see snow. Now we got so much snow that it's all concentrated in the north. Must be fucking nice.
I was coaching soccer indoors because it was 34 degrees, and they thought, yeah, let's just take these 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old children and put them inside so they won't be in pain when they're learning the very, very, very basics of soccer. And with me as well, because I have no idea how to play soccer. And I'm coaching the team because they needed people. So yeah, I'm learning with these small children. It's a lot of fun. But like I look out the window and it was just whitewash. And it's just like
that's crazy. I didn't think where you all were at got that much snow. I don't know.
The cold hits the hot. The cold front hits the warm front, and it's so high up that like if it's 33, 34, 35 down below, it's cold enough up there, man. So like it was like a what were the old the 7-Up icy or Slurpee that was white. There was a flavor. It was like I don't remember what flavor it was.
Like Frost or some weird.
Yeah, that's what it looked like, dude. It was like a Slurpee on your windshield. It was just like huge wet ice balls that were just falling from the sky. Like it was just slushy, sloppy. It was just nasty. Like we walked outside and we all just went, ew. It was terrible.
Can you make that noise again?
I don't even remember what I made. Just punch, swash, slash sounds. Yeah, but no, that was the weekend for me, and so I watched my yard and everything outside do nothing and get nothing done, and yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, we got snow yesterday as well. It was nuts. Although when you said 34, the Canadian in me first went, dude, that's a beautiful day, and then I'm like, wait, no, Americans, that's a weird day. That's a cold day.
Yeah. That's 2 in Canada and 34 in America, roughly.
Mother's Day, it snowed here, and that's par for the course because we get snow pretty much every month. In fact, in my lifetime, I have seen snow in each of the 12 months.
Yeah, no, homie, don't play that.
No, we've had it, and I've seen it, and so it's just because of where we are that our weather is just so like all over the place. It's just here, there, everywhere. But yeah, and then I went and I had a massage today, so that was fantastic. If you ever get the chance, go ahead. And it's probably like the best part about private health insurance is for things that aren't exactly necessity. If you've got a health spending account, all right, I can get a little bit more behind that, but that's kind of like the one good thing that I've found so far.
Which is kind of crazy. I don't know. Like, the rumor is that they are going to have a lot more snow this year. It's just that's what I heard. It's going to be one of those things that it's going to be a colder summer, and I'd be careful what you plant, Hannah, because if it's not going to be resistant to some of that, you might regret that. Especially if you're getting snow in Michigan. Michigan against snow. We ain't got no damn snow up here. It's all ridiculous. Yeah. That's ridiculous. You got snow. I can't believe that. You should have been like videotaping that, like doing crazy weather commentary.
Well, part of the problem that I've got here is I've got this going on in my house. Like, I have all of these plants, and once they get to a certain point, they gotta move. It's like all my pepper plants are about 2-3 inches tall. They need to be out in some natural sunlight. They'll get about 3 or 4 or 5, 6 inches, and that's they get transplanted. Like, I gotta go. All my sunflowers are so tall they're tipping over.
You're gonna have heaters in you're going to have heaters inside of your greenhouse, man. That's what's going to happen. You're going to end up with a greenhouse out in your backyard because you're going to be like, it's damn cold to grow things here, but I still want to grow.
I'm building like a rigid greenhouse because the one that I had out last year, it worked so good, but the plastic got so beat up from being outside in the elements that it tore a few times, and then the zipper broke. And so I kept the frame, and I tossed the plastic. And so there's a couple of ways to do it using painter's plastic, 3 mil plastic. You can, build the frame and wrap it around, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do this year, but I might have to do something because if I don't do a greenhouse, I don't think I'll have enough heat for any tropical plants. And I'm zone 7 or 8 or 9. I can't remember what it is here. Whatever. It's just terrible. Oh no! Speaking of terrible,
these hats are terrible. I know. Before we get into the Kentucky State
unless they're saying meow and chicken fucker, I don't think they're cool hats. That's all.
All right, meow.
The Super Troopers are the only people that are cool in the movies. Other than that, I've never.
So I have a question, Keith. Do they wear hats like this in Canada? Do your Mounties wear hats like this?
All
right, you have a task of getting us a picture here in the next few minutes. I'm going to keep moving, but
actually, what's really funny, only because you mentioned it, I instantly ran over to Google because there's an image that I wanted to pull up. Hang on just one sec here. Let me just make sure that's all good to go. All right, how do I share my screen? Just click that right there.
Yep,
share
you
screen.
Just click it.
All right, and
you got to tell it what to share.
All right,
but the reason we're going to cover this a little bit is because Kentucky State Police actually, oh my god.
So, all right. So
they're Canadian Texans.
Yeah. So
is this that weird fair thing you talked about like a month ago?
Every year for 10 days, Calgary Police Service is the only police service which is allowed to alter its uniform temporarily, and they wear these cowboy hats, and that's Calgary Police. You see a lot more of them riding riding horses and what have you, but yeah, I'll find the picture of the RCMP for you with the hats.
All right, there you go. That'll be fun. So Kentucky State Police had they uploaded a what do they call those photos that they put at the top of your Facebook? A profile photo.
Profile photo, yeah.
Yep. It has since been taken down and all the posts have been removed. But I have screenshots and I'll show you in a second. This is what they replaced it with. This was the original one. Our color is gray.
Gosh.
Our gender is trooper. And I'm dead serious. Like,
Oh, that's what
dead
that was.
serious. This is like, and here I have screenshots. I'm going to bring over in a second here. But they essentially did that, and I screenshotted the shit on my phone and added it to our document so that we could look at it. Because so you can see right here that it doesn't give a date.
So they put it as their banner in the background.
Yes, there you go. That's what it is. It's their banner. And they posted it. They here you go. This is their cover photo right here. Here's all the comments on it. It's gone. You cannot find this photo anywhere. And they didn't apologize. They've said nothing, man, at all about it.
So they're just trying to distract and step away.
I do honestly think it's completely and entirely expected for the state of Kentucky to do something like that, but it's not okay. But if that would have said like Oregon or like Washington State or something, it'd be like, really? Or maybe Maine or Vermont. That'd be like, yeah, wow, that's a surprise. But Kentucky, you're like,
We expect racism and bigotry out of there.
I mean, the fact that they had to go so far as say our color is great. I mean, and they have minorities in that picture. And they if you look through here, now here's the most recent one they uploaded yesterday. And it's like, even this, you just go, I don't think if I were you guys, I would be putting this up there. It's just me. I just probably wouldn't do that.
That does me a heckin' discomfort there, friend.
Yeah.
in the end, like, that's a good example. So the fact that banner was able to get through all of the main channels for their marketing campaign, their marketing professionals, means one of two things. Is either there's a bunch of yes people there who just yes sir, or there is such a ignorance probably isn't the right word, but it's probably pretty close. There's a level of ignorance there, and non-inclusivity to where they don't let any of the minorities and people who are actually in the police force that they apparently are showing off. Those people don't get in on any of the important decision-making processes, right? Like you have we have our black guy and we have our Latin American gentleman, and we have 3 women, and that's our quota, and we're comfortable. And here is our picture that makes it say that we're doing all of the things. Like, you know what I mean? Like we have minorities and we have females on the team here, but we don't ask them any questions of what they think about this. That's left to the old guys sitting up in the front office, and like that's how an image like that gets through. You know, I've
never seen anything that blatant, dude. Like, I mean, that's like
not like something
horrible.
That
like
that's like an image that you would see in like like a Facebook group where it's like it's a toxic group where you're like, ugh, but not like a professional public face of the state.
Yeah,
but
I could not understand why they did that. It befuddled me to be. I mean, like, I'm like, and the only reason I saw it because I don't follow Kentucky State Police at all.
I saw it on Reddit just really quickly. I never stopped to read it though.
Yeah, I didn't see it on Reddit. It was just it was a friend that's from that area was sharing it and then commenting on that post, and all of a sudden it shows up in my feed, and I was like, you got to be joking me. He's like, no, I'm not joking. And I was like, oh, so I went and reported it. Like I was like, screw this. I'm gonna report it. Commented on their thing like I'm reporting this. I think Buddy's frozen.
No?
He's
you are
good.
sitting very stoic,
Yeah.
my friend.
He's reflecting on the Calgary hats and
like,
the Kentuckians.
And I found you a good image. So
All right, good. You go ahead and share it.
oh
And
okay.
I just can't understand the logic in why anybody would ever, like, whoever did that and got that through should lose their job. That's a job ender. In my
Whoa,
opinion.
yeah. Yep. Yeah, dude.
So there you go. There's
All
Those are targets in the woods. That's what I see there. I see targets in the woods.
I love the pants. Like
those are nice
I don't
pants.
understand those. Like they've all got that little frump that
It's
comes
like
up.
a
Yeah,
riding
I
pant,
don't-
dude. It's why. It's a riding pant. It's a riding pant style.
I mean, I
'Cause they ride
suppose.
horses.
So when your legs are forward, that
well,
like the
Canadian
lines are
Mounted
straight or
Police,
something.
but,
So okay, buddy. I got another question.
all right.
Can you Google how many people have been mauled by like a moose or a bull or something like that in Canada? How many police have died from that because they're wearing a big red check flag on their shirt?
Dude,
Like,
yeah.
who's gonna get?
I don't know if the
kill him.
I don't know if the red bull thing is the same as the bull moose or elk thing. I don't think the colorblind or like I think it's more like because I don't know. That's just one of
Keith,
those.
can you Google
I know that's
it?
dangerous to be anywhere near those. That might be a hard check on that one. But Kentucky police, we talk about the police not being aware of like just the situation that they're in, and like we talk about their quality of their training, and this is just another area where there's a disconnect from the people they serve. They just literally don't understand the community and the space abroad. It's like when you would interact with someone who's in a really, really, really tightly held little bubble of a church in certain community where you're like, how did you possibly think that's a good idea? And they've just never had anyone question anything or ever asked any minority that's involved. Like, what do you think of this? It's just like the police do the same thing there. It's the only thing I could think of.
It is. It is, and you're right, Hannah. And that's the big issue here. Is like it's like why did it get through? And it's just because there's a bunch of people that don't see it as wrong. It's in higher positions that shouldn't be, or they're all unregulated. One of the two. I mean, they could just have a very unregulated face. Maybe it's somebody's wife that runs the Facebook page or something like that, or maybe it's their mom. It's like, yeah, it's the mom. I'm gonna make this. I'm good at Photoshop. I'm gonna make you some shit. I don't know.
They hired a professional photographer for that picture. They were staging that happened there. Someone staged that in there, and then that would be like something where it's like we had the local high school kids put together a series of images, and we picked the best one, And meanwhile, some kid is either a troll or just a huge Ben Shapiro fan, and like he's the one that got the picture through. Like when you open it up to the internet, please vote for our next banner, and it'll be like, Bodie McBoatface, right? So this would be racist McRaceface.
Did I tell you guys? This is a side note. My story about Bodie McBoatface weed.
Nope.
So I was having a
Bodie McBoatface weed.
There is. I was having a really bad day, and I left work, and the one thing that I was like, you know what? It's been a crap day. I really want to just go home, have a joint, relax, and go to bed, and not be overanalyzing the garbage that was today. So I go to the first dispensary was on my route home, and they didn't have shit. They were waiting for their shipment, and they had nothing. So I'm like, okay, this sucks. And this is a time when I really only had 2 dispensaries to go to in my little area. And so I go to the second one, and I'm like, I don't get a shipment until later on in the week too. I hope they're not out. So I get there, and the person sees me staring up at the board, because for the boards, what they have is they have, like your pre-rolls, your flour, your oils, edibles, things like that. And they have them all on the screens, and they show you like the potency, the brand, the name, and all of that, so you know how to order. And I'm kind of watching, and one of the salespeople comes over and says, "Hey, can I help you with anything? Like, can I help you like find what you're looking for?" And I'm
Can
like,
I help you find your weed, sir?
"Excuse me, bruh. Can I help you with something?" No, it's totally normal.
This is
And-
we are so far into the future with this story right now. I was like, I went to the one place that has weed, and then I went to another place, and they were like, "Dude, can I help you find your weed?" This is so the future. I am in Ohio. I am in 1971. People think it causes meth addiction.
We'll get back to that.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, well, this is what I want. This is what's going on. I had a really bad day. I just want to relax and I want to not feel bad anymore. And the guy's like, okay, well, let me just pull this up. So he pulls up his tablet. He's going through. Okay. So based off of what you're saying, this is kind of what I'm thinking. And there's a new street among them. And he lists off the name. And one of them happens to be Bodie McBoatface. And I looked at him and I said, that actually did just make my day, because knowing that that's a thing, that the internet was denied the glory of a boat named Bodie McBoatface, but somebody was smart enough to grab that and be like, no, let's just call a weed that. And the tragedy of this story is that he read out the percentages, so like the THC and the CBD, and they were both negligible. And I'm like, oh, that is so Bodie McBoatface story, because it just ends in disappointment for everyone.
But I like the flavor, man. I guess. I don't know.
It tasted good.
So, real quick to add insult to injury.
Oh, jeez.
Yep.
Andy Bashar, what's he talking about?
So it gets worse.
Oh, jeez.
The KPS training videos quoted Hitler and ruthless violence. Here's the updates from, so the governor got pissed off. It's like, this is unacceptable. Why am I learning about this through social media? They then came and they said, well, we got rid of material and is currently part of anything. It was removed in 2013. This guy says, I'm angry and embarrassed. And as a Jewish American, I am genuinely disturbed by this.
Oh, my gosh.
This is the photo gallery.
Oh, no.
Yeah, this is going to be bad,
Now,
isn't it?
Let me admit, not only... So if this is 2013, I guess I'll accept it. But this is that weird size of a slide where it's like, we're going to give you a square photo versus... Like, it doesn't fit. This is designed to not go on a project, like a long TV, like a high-res TV.
This was designed before widescreen computers existed. This was probably made on Windows XP and then imported into the new version of. Oh man, like having the Hitler quote thing reminds me of like when they were showing Nazi quotations to fans at Trump rallies, and they were like, "What do you think about this quotation?" And they're like, "Yeah, that sounds pretty good." And they're like, "Well, Mein Führer wrote that one." And they're just like,
Yeah. Well, and here you go. The thin gray line. Now, we just saw them post a picture.
Our color is great.
Our color is great. They didn't change. There's no difference. So even if they got rid of,
even worse.
Rid of this in 2013, they're still using the same terminology.
I feel like there should be somebody singing. What the hell is that song? You hear it in like NASCAR rallies or something. It's like some patriotic masturbatory song.
That's pretty long.
Yeah, maybe it's proud to be an American.
Don't sing it. I don't want to get dang. But yes, it's probably I'm proud to be an American. So this, I'll be honest with you. Not only is this a very hard slideshow to look at because of how it's presented, the fonts
contrast is terrible.
The fact that we have a eagle in the background staring at us like he wants to kill us. I'm sorry, this is a very poorly put together presentation.
I have the urge.
This is like from 1999, man. This is like in 1999.
That's what I mean. I bet you this is it's like Windows XP, and then they never made a new one because, I mean, it's Kentucky. They're probably still running XP. Their monitors are tube monitors. They weigh 60 pounds.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like they're.
That's why this square works really good, because everything is still in that square 4x3 format.
I mean, I would hate
Well, yeah.
to be the public service director that has to explain this. Like, they're using a
Well,
Bruce Wayne
the
Batman
good
as a
news is you
weapon.
wouldn't be for much longer because you should be fired and potentially blacklisted from everything involving a computer for the rest of your life.
Yeah. The funny thing here is they advocate Bruce Wayne, right? They advocate Batman, which is a fictional character. We should not be worried. Like, my God. But on top of that, you do know Batman's a vigilante. He did work with the police, but he played by his own rules. He basically thought the police were a joke, therefore he had to do their job for him. I'm dead serious. Like, like it's hello.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there you go. I missed this one before. Then they have a Bible verse in here. A warrior must possess certain traits to protect certain things and have the courage to do both at all costs.
He trains my hands for war and my fingers. My fingers. He's training your fingers.
What training guy is this? Like,
for Call of Duty.
Like, why do we have this guy? What? How does it?
Is that a Mongol?
See, they got a little. No, that's an attempt at a. Oh, I was looking at the last side. Oh,
Where do you see that?
Oh,
I missed that too.
Oh, you know what? I bet that's the samurai. They're trying
samurai.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, I understand the sentiment they have on this. Like, it makes total sense what they're talking about. Like, it's Kentucky. Like, this is patriarchal. This is strength and power, and positioning, and then you
see what they have on the right side?
Yeah, I see it.
Just for you. Just for you, Hannah.
Right next to leadership and peace of mind, they have the Super Troopers who busted a whole bunch of dirty cops who were smuggling weed.
This is
there you go.
This is just like total fetishization of people who could never quite make it into the military. But they still think it's
who were in the military, and then they ended up in the police. And it's one of the reasons why they had such a trigger finger is because their training isn't quite the type of training that you need to deal with domestic problems. It's the kind of training you need to deal with violent external problems. But in the end, like this is
like cheap 1990s Tony Robbins for cops.
Tony Robbins, eat now.
Tony hungry.
There's
Oh
your
man, that's
Hitler
one of the
quote
best.
right here.
There it is.
Yep.
What's it say for the? Did they highlight it or something? I can't.
Essential for success is perpetually constant and regular employment of violence.
Oh my! What? So what is it?
Wow.
Who's it attributed to below? Does it say Adolf Hitler?
It says
it
it
Adolf
does,
Hitler.
but it colored it so that you don't see it.
Yeah, because I can't read it there.
But who would even put a Hitler quote on there?
Right next
there's
to
another
Einstein.
one. Oh my God, I missed this one too.
Yeah,
I don't even know
right
if this
below
is a Hitler
Einstein.
quote. Is this a
So
Hitler?
I guess the associations with police officers and Nazis. I gotta kill ourselves and Nazis. Well, the thing I think, if I find it interesting, go back to you had the one slide had an Adolf Hitler quote on it, and directly above it had a Jewish man.
Not only a Jewish man, a Jewish man who was basically who had to leave Germany because of Hitler.
If you look at what that quote says from Einstein, like it says, like go back one. Look at the quote from Einstein. It says, "The world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing." He's basically saying that all of the Nazi people in Germany were like, meh. And then right below it, there's a quote from the guy who told them all that this is fine, we're good, no big deal.
Okay,
Orchestrated killing.
So I just did a quick Google, and apparently, at least a quick Google shows, and I haven't really dug deep to verify if it is all 100% accurate and nobody is wrong. But I took a look for that Hitler quote, and it seems to actually be him. But part of me was actually hoping that it wasn't Hitler at all, just because it would be even funnier that not only did they have a Hitler quote, it was a non-Hitler fake quote that they attributed to Hitler. Because they thought it would be edgy and inflammatory, and it wasn't even Hitler. That would have I probably would have died of laughing and fallen out of my chair.
So we've essentially found the QAnon 4chaner who works for the police office. in Kentucky.
I mean,
It doesn't sound like that's too.
And the just on a note on the Spartan masturbation here, because they really have done a lot with Spartans. Like, they've over sexualized Spartans in this, and I think it's hilarious because Spartans hated projectile weaponry, and yet a lot of the Second Amendment gun fetishists all quote the Spartans about from my cold dead hands or something. And it's just like, hey, they would have hated you guys and thought you were cowards. So,
what do you think? What do you think? All the Second Amendment gun fetishists, don't tread on me. The government is not powerful. Would think about the Spartan ideal of all young men being taken into the military from youth essentially and formed into the proper citizenry.
Yeah. Okay. So they have two Adolf Hitler quotes. Sorry, I might be a little further back, and then they have in the slideshow after the second Hitler quote a slide that is the Band of Brothers inspiration, the flag being planted.
Iwo Jima.
I think, and maybe that was it. And at the top, it has über alles, which is German for over all others.
I didn't notice that either.
Like, anytime you hear Deutschland über alles, that's probably a Nazi or somebody who is a Nazi sympathizer, because that was the Germans are above all others. They just took out the Nazis or the Germans aspect. Like, yeah, you're right, Hannah. This is their QAnon 4chan.
Yeah, this is like
who put this together.
This is literally like everybody keeps talking about, like the police associations with white supremacy. Like, this is a massive positive data point. Like, that's a huge deal, man. Like, one, we've got this, the language of the ad in the banner. Then we have the language of their training materials, which on first glance we're like, wow, that's kind of nasty. And then all of a sudden, if you have any general knowledge of history, like Keith just pulled off that one there. I mean, I don't know. It's just one of those things. If we are ignorant enough to forget our history, we're doomed to repeat it. And I swear to you, man, like, they are trying the best they can to dumb people down so they don't remember what happened last time. And it just feels like it pretty hard.
Well,
and this is
one of the guiding principles of the party is whoever controls the history controls the future.
Mm-hmm.
If 2 + 2 is 5, it has always been 5.
In Room 101, we will teach you the truth.
All right. Well, let's do our answering conservative questions segment.
Oh boy.
So, for this week, the question that we have is, how do you explain the success of Nigerian Americans in systematic racism if systematic racism is still the force that defines the lives of black people, as the left claims? And then they gave 3 bullet points. One was, Nigerian Americans as a group are more educated and have higher incomes than average Americans. Doesn't that suggest if our culture places high importance on education and achievement, you will succeed as a race? I absolutely believe racism exists, but I think the left has arrived at a weird place, and they're doing this in self-determination. Black Americans are in a similar position to succeed as white Americans from the same social economic group. So, their point is that it's unhealthy that young Black Americans have to hear every day that they can't succeed and that racism and systematic racism keeps them down. So they believe claiming that is in itself systematic racism. Now, I'll go first because this one angers me a little bit, right? And I had my uncle is Nigerian, so I reached out to him and I actually asked. I had a I was like, hey, let's can we talk about this? Unfortunately, he did not get back to me. So he will eventually get back to me, I'm sure, by next week. But being a scientist, he's probably busy. But if I look at his yes,
sorry, I have is your uncle Nigerian or is he in Nigeria? Because you don't look like you could possibly be Nigerian in the last 1,000 years.
No, married
he's
in.
Nigerian. He married into the family.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. I was like,
I don't think Keith
Okay.
had a proper amount of syrup this morning.
Yeah, you.
It's
need a little
slow
more of that
there,
syrup
sir.
buddy. I'll send you some. I'll give you some good old American maple syrup, maybe with a little bit of walnut in it,
Spaghetti.
boy, molasses with sugar.
or molasses with sugar. Yeah, that's what it is. But anyway, so my uncle came from a very successful family in Nigeria. There was a lot of money. My uncle went to U of M. And now, again, my uncle did work hard. Don't get me wrong. But my uncle didn't grow up in the poorest parts of Nigeria. He didn't have to deal with Boko Haram. He didn't have any of that type of stuff that he actually was interacting with. And the reason I know this is because when I was in high school, his nephew was sent over to get his degree, to get his doctorate. And he lived with my family actually for a little while during the summer because he needed a place to stay because him and my uncle didn't always see eye to eye on things. So they thought sending him to our house, my parents would help out. So the issue became is him and I talked. I mean, like, they had, to some extent, they had better lives than we had growing up. I mean, they had lots of riches to the extent of they didn't grow up like in affluent communities, but they were the affluent community like their family was in their city. And so, like, yes, they had a lot worse lives, different things like that, but they spent all their money on education, and that's where their money went to. And the idea is that you work and you work and then you get to go back and help educate your community. That's the whole point of that. It's a very noble cause for what they do. But the reason you see a lot of those things is not they are in the minority of Black people in America. Nigerians are not the high portion of this of Black people in America. Therefore, they're not a good representation of what it takes. They also kind of come from a different upbringing and community. And so the difference is sure, you're right. Could we eliminate, if we put a priority on education and finance, could we eliminate systematic racism? Yeah, we could probably get rid of a lot of it if we actually funded Black communities, if we actually stopped murdering Blacks in the communities that they were in. We wouldn't have this fucking problem. So Black Americans are not going to have a problem if you decide, oh, we're going to fund all of this, and oh, we're going to give living wages to all these fucking people so that they can have the same opportunities that Nigerians have in America.
I'll go second. So there's a culture thing that happens with other countries coming into the United States. I am dealing with a variety of those things with where I work, and one really enjoyable gentleman to work with came from China, and in his family, in his world, families say you must perform or you are a disgrace, you are a failure. They put you through everything, like the level of stress and force that, you know, the parental pressure put on children to perform, to succeed, to make it is intense in these cultures. And Nigeria, it's the same thing. One of the things that you run into is like parents are like, you must be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or you're a disgrace. You know, this is a massive, massive push. They have a drive in the culture to grow, to better, to push, because they are coming from a very strife-ridden and difficult world when it comes to that, and they see America as, a land of opportunity, and so like there is something there, and so that is a small culture of a small group of immigrants, and on top of that, it's a very small select group of people from that country who actually get here. It's very hard to get here. It's not an easy thing to do, and so it's an accomplishment that the few and the best actually manage to achieve. When they get here, they get that a chance. They're hard workers just to get in here as it is, and usually it's an intellectual field, so they're into the education systems, and they just go and they go and they go. I mean, straight A's, I can see that kind of a culture thing being something that would make that small subset group something that would grow. And then on the converse side of things is that they're comparing that group, though, that first generation immigrant to, let's face it, the descendants of slaves are not exactly first generation, right? So we have a systemic cultural history. We have memetics, which is the idea that trauma can be passed down through generations, economic trauma, and taking that financial trauma, but also taking educational trauma and family trauma, and putting black men in prisons really quickly. How many years, how many generations does that affect as far as the children and then the next generations come through? It's like you're comparing, one successful small subset group that doesn't have a lot of depth inside of the American system, and then another subset of minorities inside of our system, a much larger one that has been subject to what can only be called, a non-official case system in the United States. And so, like, I don't think you can compare those two groups. It's an awesome outlier, but again, we love to say in the scientific community that correlation is not causation, and there's not nearly a strong enough correlation here to say that there's no systemic racism because this one small data point is doing just great when the majority of the minority data points that we look at in the entire country not quite doing so good. So I don't think this is a legitimate claim. I think it's an interesting case to see how culture and some things can really be a strong driver into the competitive nature of the American capitalistic system. But I don't think that the comparison that they're using here is valid in any way, shape, or form.
Keith?
I think Nigerians is a totally unfair example. I mean, how many people have actually given a Nigerian prince money, by mistake? And there apparently are a lot of Nigerian princes out there. So they've got a lot of money already. And as we know, your parents' socioeconomic status is the biggest indicator of your future socioeconomic status. So, I mean, if they're all coming from princes and shit, of course they're going to succeed. No. Now that I've got that bad joke out of the way. I think this is a very stupid question. I know teachers think that just because it's clearly leading towards a conclusion. It's not.
It's a logic bomb.
Set up.
Dan Dennett would say it's a logic bomb, without question.
Yeah. Well, yeah, before he went and died in front of us, like the Sith Lord did. I see this, and I kind of looked through and skimmed through to try to see what was going on in the comment section, because I'm a masochist and I like hurting myself sometimes. And honestly, comment sections are a great way to hurt yourself, because they'll make you like either bash your skull into something or you black out. Which one happens? You never know. So anyways, so during the thread, one of the people had posted that, coming from Africa, you're really going to typically see the more successful, especially they're coming through all the correct legal channels and everything. They're coming through, they're already successful. So having that success does beget a greater chance for success, whether it's through connections or privileges, white or otherwise. You're already more likely to be successful. And let's face it, I mean, if you're somebody who is successful and you're coming to, North America, you're not doing so to go work, general labor. You're doing so to work at a higher end field. So while sure, pointing out the fact that, while systemic racism is a claim, but here we have an entire group of people who statistically exceed and go above and beyond and don't live up to that. So what's the point of believing it? Well, the point is that systemic racism isn't just about overt discrimination. It's about the societal systems and rules, regulations, and laws and everything that have been put into place to deliberately disenfranchise specific people. I mean, the fact that the Black communities in America are predominantly, lower socioeconomic status was by design. It was intentional. And people living in those communities, they not only do they have access to poor quality goods, but they also have access to poor quality services. So they're not going to get the same access to education. They're definitely not going to get the same access to healthcare because, from what I understand, Medicaid's a bit of a joke. And you're all just kind of left basically to the dogs. So I explain it as a statistical expectation that it can happen. I mean, unless you can prove, or unless the claim is that Black people cannot succeed, Black people can't do this, Black people can't do that. This claim does not exist. We're saying systemic racism influences and reduces chances, not that it nullifies and negates and destroys chances. It's yeah, sure. There's class involved, but no, it's there's just I'm going off the rails here, so I'm just gonna cut myself off there before I continue.
It makes sense. Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like there's a systemic situation that's happening there, and so it's not a valid comparison, and it definitely it's leading the witness, right? This would get thrown out of court if you ask this question. And so also with argumentation, I do think this is like the kind of question where it's a loaded question, and the only way you can answer it is where you look at the situation kind of coldly, at the risk of being three white cis males talking about whether or not Nigerians are valid and minorities are actually, being oppressed in this country. It's just one of those things where someone asks you a question and you have to kind of be like, well, I don't think so, but also I'm not in these groups and I don't have personal experience and I'm not an expert in the statistics. And so the majority of our opinions are also that they're opinions, but it's one of those empathic things where we like to try to pretend that we can imagine what it's like to not be on the winning end of our race card, respectively, and try to do the right thing. And this is just one of those things where you can just imagine what it would be like, and from reading the news and literature to kind of guess. And I don't think this, will hold up with any kind of real actual scrutiny, systemic or statistical. So, yeah. So for the question,
Fair enough.
in general.
Speaking of people that go sometimes, there becomes a discussion that we need to have, and I don't think we actually have had this discussion on the show. But I want to play
the two-state question.
What's that?
Basically, the two-state question.
Yeah,
it's long and nasty.
I want to play a video for you, real quick. And I say this because the fact that this video has to exist will lead our conversation. So what you see here is police invading a mosque, shooting tear gas or some sort of gas into the crowd. I don't see anybody being unpeaceful.
They're just trying to get out.
But they weren't unpeaceful even if you go to the beginning of the show, or of the video. So now everybody's trying to leave. And by the way, this is during the last day of Ramadan, which was last Friday. Look, there you can see a cop pushing people out the door. You can only get people out the door so fast, folks, even if they don't want to go. Yep. So they're ushering them out. People are losing shoes. There's their mats. They're getting pushed again. Now,
I see a lot of masks, but that's another thing.
that's a whole different thing. So, what's disgusting about this is the fact that this is happening during their Holy Week. Now, again, we can discuss and argue about whether their Holy Week should be respected or not, whether we believe in it or not. Again, at this current time, I don't really have an opinion either which way on these people's religious beliefs. I just know these two country, or do you call them countries? I mean, is that what they really are fighting?
Nation states?
They're one country with two different states, like a civil war, constantly.
Yeah. It's two separate groups of people laying claim to the same piece of land. And so, I mean, essentially, they both believe they have their own state, and they both believe they have their own nationality on the same piece of dirt. So, however you would distinguish those two things, I believe it's irreconcilable, in my opinion. But in the end, we have one group that is obviously significantly higher powered than the other, and we're watching a systemic breakdown.
This is awful. So here you can see them shooting again, more tear gas.
Yeah,
this guy.
If you look at the maps of what Israel's been doing when it comes to what they were given during the initial treaties from the UN to give the establishment of the state of Israel, to what they've been doing in the expansion of Israel into Palestine, into the Gaza Strip, into the West Bank, all of those things, you don't see. It's not like a legal growth. You see a hostile takeover of land. You see what the Russians, when they annexed Crimea, like the Israelites annex large portions of land on a regular basis. And it's one of the interesting areas where you see people who are Jewish by culture, like Bernie Sanders. Whether or not he's a Jewish atheist is still up for debate, but he calls himself a Jewish man, and he stands against the Jewish occupying of the West Bank and a variety of other things, because they do these things with such aggressive force. And with cell phones and everything, we see all this stuff on camera now, and even when the Palestinians are doing their worst, which can be particularly bad, what the Israelites are doing supposedly in a peaceful modern state is definitely not looking like a human rights acquiescence, right? This is pretty bad.
Yeah. Here's more. 9 people were killed in this storming. This dude. So like,
now they're throwing rocks there and protesting, which, I mean, you would too if you were. Let's say this is the heavy metal show. Well, this is the heavy metal show, right? This is your favorite band in the world, and like this is like a religious experience for you. And now all of a sudden, the police come to kick it down to be like, you can't be listening to this kind of music. You know, like the people in the crowd are going to turn on the cops that are storming it. So like, I don't know, man.
It's disgusting, and my problem here with this whole thing, and this is why I wanted to talk about it, is because these people are being evicted, from a peaceful part of it, right? And the problem I have, right, is the fact that I just lost my stream here. But the problem I have is the fact that we are not allowing, we are not stepping in. We continue to help Israel. We don't seem to give two craps about anybody else. And my problem is the fact that with all these people that are hurt in these clashes, what are we getting out of this? Why is this allowed? And like, if you go through and go all the way back to, the beginning of the conflict, that back in like the 60s, I think it was the late 60s, that's when they started splitting the land up, and that's when East Jerusalem became, what it is today.
Yeah. It's so if you look at some of Christopher Hitchens' books and some of the things that he's written about, essentially you look at the United States standing with Israel, and you see the rest of the world on many, many things going, no, that's a bad idea. And the U.S. goes, no, we back Israel. and that's the end of it. Because with the UN has veto power, the U.S. has veto power in the UN, essentially one veto out of the big seven, and you shut down any kind of major UN resolution. This is a huge problem that we have when it comes to the global political environment, and the U.S.'s weird relationship with Israel, almost a blind allegiance, a complete and total devotion.
I've never understood that, because there are so many anti-Zion and anti-Semitic sentiments, and yet it's so pro-Israel. I don't get it.
The biggest thing I know of is that it validates Christianity. So essentially, if Israel and the Jews are those rightful true owners of that land, then that confirms the precursor necessary, the prophecy necessary for all of the Jesus sequels. And then Muhammad is usually not the Muhammad and the Hadith and the Quran are not considered kosher, so to speak, for the Judeo-Christian monologue. So like they're gonna pick one, and the U.S. has clearly decided that they're gonna slip. What did they used to call them during the foundation of the country? The Musclemen. They used to fight the Musclemen who part of the Treaty of Tripoli, where the United States said that it was not a Christian nation in the initial drafting and was not actually in the final treatise. But that was a huge deal because the United States essentially was stating that they were not a Christian nation to a Muslim country, because that was a major thing that they needed to do in order to gain trust. And so like there's a narrative that we saw change there because they actually struck it from the actual wording of the treaty. And so you've seen from basically that point on, they chipping away, taking slices of the cheese. And this is one of those things. And then obviously you brought up the two-state solution. This is...
Yep. So they have two solutions, right? The two-state solution would create an independent Israel and Palestine, and is the mainstream approach to resolving conflict. The idea is that the two of them will run their countries differently, one as a Jewish state and one as a Palestinian, because neither side can get what it wants in a joined state. The only possible solution that satisfies everybody includes separating Palestine and Israel. So the other solution is the one state, right, where you would merge Israel into one big country. It becomes two different versions, one favored by some leftists and Palestinians would create a single democratic country. And basically they're claiming the Muslims would outnumber the Jews, ending Israel as a Jewish state, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like my third option.
What's that?
Said I like my third option. The UN creates its own. The UN would create its first actual state. So the UN itself, the entire country or the entire world would have a country, a nation state in Israel, where everyone seems to care, and everyone would have input into that, and that would be the first place that the UN would actually have like actual territory grounds. It would be the beginning point, the part where you could actually grow a real legitimate United Nations and a new world order, like from a place, and that would be the place that I would pick.
Yeah, and I just it's if that's what we need, then maybe that's what we get. And I think that's just the larger issue here, with this whole thing, is that there isn't a good solution. There is not.
Yeah, the Jews and the Muslims, they're mutually exclusive. They literally both claim the same religious ownage of the same space. Like it literally can never happen. It's the forever war. Robert Heinlein's forever war. Like it'll never end. And so it takes a new world order. I think. I don't think there's a two-state solution would be great, but we have to move on to Big Brother. Big Brother will encompass us. He will help us.
Big Brother.
But I don't know. That's the only thing I've ever I've ever been able to conclude. Coming from a Jewish family, I feel like Bernie. I'm just like watching Netanyahu, who's on his way out, by the way. He's not looking to succeed. So watching the Jewish state and just being grossed out by it, it's like watching Kentucky put together its media campaign. You're like, nah, I don't want anything to do with that. And so, like, my family has roots and family and connections to Israel. I don't, have any. I see it as a grotesque conservative nation at this point. And so in the future, it'd be cool to see if young people maybe swing away. But, you see the pendulum swing politically. The Israelites are swinging mighty hard in the conservative direction right now. But they've been chastising Netanyahu for all of his insider trading, essentially, with politics. So maybe they can turn the country around. I have difficulties in believing so with the political populism and all that kind of gross stuff that's still kind of going on in the prospect of a Trump 2024.
Shut your dirty little mouth.
Dude, I will not push that one out. That one is way too real. The day we underestimate it is the day, like these clashes between groups like Palestinians and Israelites. These kinds of clashes are the clashes when it comes to a society being overcome by extrema. And all the people in the middle who are like, I'm kind of cool with Palestinians. They make good falafel and they make good food and we have all this good stuff. And then next thing you know, like everybody's killing each other. And like all the middle people get overrun and they get destroyed and they disappear. Well, if you look at the United States over the years, the middle class and relatively, whatever, we're kind of getting overrun. So it's kind of scary to think about.
Yeah, and that's very fair. And that's the crazy thing about that is who's going to step in, who's going to take control. And I think that's going to be a larger fight when we get down to it. Speaking of fights...
It has to be global.
Well, it has to be, but we'll see. Younger voters have propelled Biden to victory over Trump in 2020, a new study finds. So a report that was published by Democratic firm Catalyst, and I don't know if that's how you're supposed to say it, but I'm just going to call it Catalyst. They found that millennial and Gen Z voters constituted much higher share of the electoral college in the 2020 presidential race compared to 2016. Essentially, a third of all votes, 31% last year, versus 23% 2 years ago. Now, I think there's a little bit of a difference here, and I'm going to preface this because I have a kid that could vote this year or last year in the election, and I had one that could not. He was a year too young. So I had one that got to vote in his first presidential election ever. He also got to vote in the primary, too, and that was pretty cool to see. He barely made that primary, vote. But the idea is he was excited for it. A lot of people, even if they disagreed with him, were excited for it. So it does show that there's more younger voters coming out and voting. The question becomes is, can we sustain this? Is this a sustainable trend? And B, what are we going to do to motivate these younger voters? They had a huge motivation to dump Trump. I mean, that's pretty simple. People don't like Trump, except for maybe Canadians. They kind of like Trump. Where Keith's from, at least. They like Trump.
Only the ones who work at the Calgary rodeo.
Damn, Pete.
That's it.
Yeah.
But that's the funny thing here is this report, this study actually went through this, and that was interesting because to me, if we see this increase right in this study, we see this increase of these people coming. Does that mean we're going to see an increase again out there? And the one thing the study didn't show is how many more people were able to vote that came of age that year versus other years. So, for example, if the 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds of that generation that are now able to vote is a higher percentage than they were the year before, then we shouldn't be surprised at the turnout. And that was the one statistic I could not find in any other data or anything that showed that, because it would be interesting to me to be able to say, well, because like kids in my, my son in his era was able to do this and vote, and there's, let's say, 10% more than there of that generation than there was, 2 years before that. That's something that we should be looking at too.
One of the things we have to also look at is the kind of numbers that Biden was commanding here in this election. Are those comparable to the numbers that Obama had? You know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, so if you've got young voters who are coming out, and so we saw the number roughly 30%, I think is what it was for young voters for Biden, and let's see, I was just looking up something quick from the Pew Research Foundation. 66% in 2008, those under 30 voted for Barack Obama, making the disparity as large as it had been. And what we saw is a massive motivation of young people in his case. And so that was a big deal because those are, that was a tipping point essentially for when the youth vote comes out, when people who are obviously, I mean, the youth vote is kind of counterintuitive to anything that the conservative vote would be in almost any position, because they say when you're young, you want to change the system. When you're older, you want to conserve the system. What you had when you were younger, as long as it was good. If you grew up in like a recession and a horrible time, well, wait a minute, you're describing the millennials with crash after crash after crash and financial rape after financial rape. So we're looking at, a young group of people, Gen Z and millennials, who have seen forever wars and financial crashes driven by old white guys in suits. And we're saying, we're kind of done with that. And so they made a soup of young people who are particularly unhappy. And I think these numbers are comparable to what Obama had, which was kind of like a similar situation with the Iraq war and the recession that was just starting and pummeling and destroying things. And it wasn't quite as intense as it was during the Obama administration when the full-on recession hit up until 2012 economically. But like those numbers are the numbers that we compare here. And initially, it seems that the interest and the excitement for young people is there for Biden. And if you look at those numbers for the second election for Obama, they were way closer. One of the reasons why Obama couldn't get anything done is because people didn't come out for his second election to give him a mandate. And so, McConnell was able to just be a stopping force to say no to everything. So this is great news, but like it just feels so similar to the Democrats saying, hey, we got the young kids, they're with us forever. And then they stopped trying and it just dried up. And so, like, this is awesome. I love this story. I love this whole thing about young people coming out. But, boy, you better keep it up. They better keep working hard because you will not keep millennial and Gen Z interest if you don't pass some real stuff. Biden's been doing well. His 100 days, he's done, in my opinion, relatively well. But I don't know if he had a couple more years to this, if you can keep that kind of momentum.
It's kind of like how I felt about Ant-Man. I went into it expecting a superhero movie with Paul Rudd, and I got a superhero movie with Paul Rudd. That's kind of how I feel I've been treated with regards to Biden's presidency. I think
I'm gonna need an explanation on that one.
It's you don't go into it with the highest of hopes. You're not sitting there going, this is totally going to change everything. It's going to be groundbreaking and everything. It's just, you just go and you expect, well, it'll be okay. And okay. I doubt I'll hate it, but I know I won't get that time back. So at least it's better than, getting addicted to heroin or something. And I was pleasantly surprised because I was like, wow, that was what I expected. And that was what I got. I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was the best thing ever, but I do not regret it either. So
you piqued my interest because I watched the amalgamations of the Marvels and the Ant-Man stuff was like, that was an interesting part of the movie. But like the idea of watching an entire movie of that, it's just eluded me. I just like, no, there's no way in hell I want to watch a wet, hot summer Marvel edition. I just can't do it. So no, I never pulled the trigger on that. But Yeah, so that's kind of how you feel about the Biden thing. Like, it's been what you've
not-
expected. It hasn't been this pearly, wonderfully amazing thing, but it's been a trudge forward, and it feels pretty good.
Yep. It doesn't feel terrible. It's just, it isn't like the situation we got with Trump where we're like, okay, well, I mean, this can't be that bad, right? And then it just got progressively worse and worse and worse and worse. At least we're not doing that. And the fact we're saying at least things aren't worse, that tells you just how low the bar's been set and just how poorly all the GOP do at track and field, because they can't even clear a hurdle that's like 2 inches underground. They always trip on it.
Well, McConnell went right back to just like the new agenda is just to block Biden at all costs.
Well, keeps him popular.
So we'll see like that kind of, mandate driven legislation, refusal. Will it finally look bad for the young people who are now, they've subscribed to the Twitter accounts for people, right? They voted. So maybe they're going to get messages and like McConnell says he refuses to do anything at all, like a giant baby. And so maybe the young people will care, because the two points that you have on here for the most diverse takeaway electorate ever, I mean, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's a wonderful number. So like, I don't know. I love to see young people and throw a bunch of colors and throw a bunch of culture in there. Just bring it. Just make this, the American melting pot just a mess. Just bring it all in here and let's go from there. Like when we start talking about hegemony and monocultures, when things get gross and dangerous and racist. It's difficult mixing everything, but I love it.
Well, I think that's the thing here is the high level points, right? And you can read through this study. We have it in the article, but they talk about it being the most diverse. We had a multiracial coalition that helped. Latino voters continued to favor Democrats. Black voters increased. Asians, American, and Pacific Islander voters saw increases. And the urban-rural voting divide continues to be immensely important. This here is huge because that is what a lot of these states are enacting. Rules to not benefit multicultural states or states that have minorities in a more lower income population, right? And obviously this is the big one, the record-breaking turnout for young voters. Again, you saw all these other changes, right? All these other changes were huge in it. The new voters made a difference. Now, somebody's probably going to say this propaganda to, essentially say that we all cheated and added new voters. But I can tell you, based on my son's, demographic, they wouldn't vote it. Even if some of his friends, I don't agree with how they vote, because I know how they voted.
Dude, it's you are in red country just like I am. So young people just like, my daddy said.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. It's horrible. But the big thing here is there are millions of people that still haven't voted. So if we can figure out how to tap into these other people, and I'll tell you, I have a friend who he just could not vote for Biden. Like, we argued off and on and off and on, and finally he's like, "Do you really think my one vote matters?" And I said, "I absolutely do, for the pure fact that you influence your generation of children. You influence other friends that we have. You influence people to some extent. And I get you want to vote for the more progressive party. I'm in your boat, man. We're on the same page. You and I actually agree 100% on this, but we have to start tearing down those. And unless you're willing to get off your ass and actually help me, man, I'm telling you right now, we're not going to be able to make a change. It does not change. So until you help me tear down this establishment and rebuild it back up, we're not going to be any different than we are any other time. And that becomes the problem, is we have to support this majority party. in this type of an election for the pure fucking fact we cannot afford to have a Trump in office ever again. Ever. And we must do everything in our power to reduce the probability that this will ever become a thing again. We can have a Mitch McConnell, and that's devastating, but it's not as devastating as what Trump is. And maybe we should do this. Maybe this summer, that's what we should do. We should build an episode where we talk through the complete and total devastation that Trump brought to America on the side that is Republican, but on the main side that is like outside of his party norms. He did things like him putting 236, people in office, right? Judges and things like that. That's harmful, but that's a Republican attack. That's whatever. I mean, we could argue about why.
Well, he
didn't.
He didn't pick those people.
No,
those were all. McConnell gave him a list of people, and he go, yes, and so.
Yeah. As long as he got his fucking cheeseburgers and his Cokes, that's all he cared about.
Yeah.
He had some buttons.
And he can watch his 4, 5, 6 hours of whatever TV.
His Newsmax. And again, folks, my point becomes is that we saw a sustainable increase. This is huge. This is a sustainable increase. Now, how are we going to get these young people out to say, I don't want this Democratic Party anymore. I do not want this. I want a socialist party. I want a progressive party. I want people that are going to stand up for the lives of all fucking Americans and not just the white ones. When we can get there, how do we motivate these people? And that, folks, that is what will start to change America. Until then, we're going to continue to have police killings. We're going to continue to have snow in Ohio. And we're continuing to have Canadians try to dilute their maple syrup before they give it to us. Because we know that war is coming.
Yeah, it might be. Once. It might be. In the end, with the one thing for your friend is that your friend could be a person who changed things. One word is vaccines. There's statistical proof that people have been looking at. So like when someone who is a matriarch or a patriarch in a society and a family gets their vaccine in a vaccine hesitant community, they see that person, a person that they take as a person who makes decisions and a person they respect. They did it. They got it done. They see church leaders. They see business leaders. They see barbers. They see, local elected positioners, people in the Chamber of Commerce or whatever, local people think is important. And they get their vaccines. They've seen that in those communities, you see a massive uptick in the number of people that are willing to just, hey, this person that I think is important made this decision. The same thing happens for political decisions. If you make a political decision, you're like, listen, I know you guys know me as the guy. I'm the blue dude who's always going bonkers, or not so much the blue dude, but the progressive who's always just like, I'm hard into the left. And in this case, I'm making a socioeconomic decision. I'm making a decision for country, and like. People see that, and people in communities see that, and that little thing, as small as it may be. I have a few friends in my community that I swear, if they would have been just like, I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, it would have changed the number of people that regularly interact with them in this hard socialist, hard left-leaning thing. And it may be 5, 10, 15 votes, but like spread that all over, dude. It makes a big difference. And so like. That kind of commiseration is important, and I think that would definitely change some things a little bit.
Think of it this way: all those people in 2016 that refused to vote for Hillary, what the fuck did you do for 4 years? Tell me what you did. I want to know.
They masturbated.
Political, yeah, exactly.
Because they think they are just so much smarter than everybody else because they think differently. When really, no, they're just contrarians who need to feel smarter than everybody by disagreeing.
Yeah. You have the same thing where you live too, Keith, and that's the most frustrating thing. It's funny because you might as well just move to Michigan, man. We got less snow, and we got legal weed too, so we don't have good health care, but we got legal weed, so
just don't come to Ohio. It snows and we don't have weed. Don't Nothing is good. Ohio. I don't understand.
Why did you go to Ohio?
Because he's a capitalist. Capitalism. He wanted money. It was all about the Benjamins. It had nothing to do with his morals anymore.
What is this Benjamin?
Folks. He became the SLC punk of this podcast.
Well, if anything, that's a nice point to make because I'm actually considering a future position in the community here, depending on where I plant permanent roots, or whether or not I'll be joining Chamber of Commerce, joining things like that. I'm gonna start doing local elections. Like I might start doing it. We'll see. We'll see if they'll take a guy who doesn't fit the mold, but. Well, I don't know. Like, I mean,
we'll see when they listen to their podcast. They're gonna be like, "Why are you associated with that Chris Tanner dude? Like, what the fuck?"
Well, I've had multiple people. I've met
on his show.
I've had multiple people that I know and talk to in the area here that are just like, "Are you involved locally?" I'm like, "I want to be." I'm uncertain in when and where. And at 37 with the baby face and weird psoriasis spots, if anybody would ever actually vote for me.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. Like,
we'll
that's
see what
perfect
happens.
Republican right there. You know, like, you'll rival every one of the Republicans no matter what it looks like. They'll be like, "Oh,
no,
how did you
their
become
noses
Democrat?"
are red from all the bourbon. But
Anyway.
so we got quick saves.
on to quick saves. Tonight, Keith, your quick save
So
is by
don't
her.
press play because it'll get taken down.
I know.
We'll get the DMC thing.
I looked at it already. Yeah, I looked at it first. I was like, all right, go ahead,
Well,
Keith. You can explain the way the music does.
So I don't know how to define the genre. I'm not very good at that because I don't. I just use the great big umbrella terms. So I see this as more of like hip hop or R&B. My wife was listening to this the other day, and so she sent me the name of the song, and she goes, "I want you to listen to this." And in case some of you are new to the show, my wife isn't white, so I have education right beside me pretty much at all times. So this song, as some of you may recognize the phrase "I can't breathe," I believe that was George Floyd who was saying that in his final moments.
Multiples.
And
there's the police strangulation and all of them. Yeah.
So essentially, the song covers the themes of the police brutality and the racist bend to it, and the fact that if you're a person of color, you're a lot more likely to be the victim of police brutality than somebody who glows in the dark like me. And it's a beautiful song, and I strongly encourage everybody to give it a listen. It's it's only 3-4 minutes long, just like always, and it does kind of call out the white people who are saying, you're just using your black friend as a scapegoat and a way of making yourself not feel like you're contributing to the problem when your silence is part of the problem. While I physically can't breathe, I'm still trying to make a sound, and you, who has no obstruction, is sitting there in silence. And I think a lot of people need to give it a listen and just digest and process the words. And like I said, it's absolutely beautiful, and I've listened to it a few times in the last 24 hours. It's just it's I think it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I actually listened to it earlier, and I've heard this song before. I don't know what show it was on or what. Like, it was on, it's in something, and I heard this song before, and I was like, oh, hey, this is kind of cool. Like, I don't know, remember what damn show it is, and I gotta go look that up, because, like, I was like, man, because, like, a lot of my music, weirdly enough, has come from Letterkenny lately. And then, like, you hit the Apple Music, and I just hit, like, what artists sound like them? And then I find all these other artists, and that's kind of how I find my music. But yeah, this song is very powerful, and I would encourage everybody to give it a check out, and I can't play any more than that 3 seconds, unfortunately, because we'll get DMCA'd or whatever the heck they call that.
Taken down.
Hypocritical
dumped.
Garbage, which is sad because we're not even using it to make money on it. Like, like we don't even make
Yeah,
money
if you
on
don't monetize the video, there should be a restriction. I mean, if anything, like, publicity is publicity, but
some people don't see that. So my quick save came from a recent science article that said scientists unearthed Africa's oldest burial, a small child laid to rest 78,000 years ago. Now,
this is a pretty emotional.
the biblical, 8,000 years, which excited me just because of that. And
Yeah,
and
it's
I've
kinda
been
sad.
dealing with that a little bit more lately. So,
This is an emotional read. I don't know if if you guys read, like, I read this at work. This is an emotional, like reading through the story. Just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like a connection as a parent of a young person, of two of them. Like it's an intense story, man. It's really cool.
yep, because they go through some of the different behaviors, right? What people did, jewelry they wore. They talked about, what did people do in the you got to think about this. Like, this is a grave. This is in an area where people could dig things up, throw things away. People didn't value things once they moved on. Civilizations didn't just last for, millennia, right? It's a thing that could easily be replaced. Hence why sometimes history becomes a pain in the ass to deal with, because when things get supplanted or upplanted or whatever you want to call it, it makes a big issue. So, but yeah, the big thing here is the description of what it was like and how they buried it, and they compared the burial to like a womb. And if you think about it, it's to me, and maybe this is just Chris getting emotional, right? But to me, this was kind of like a artistic endeavor of how we see things. Like, a womb is life, but a womb can be death. It's both. The earth, recreating a womb in the earth, is giving your child or your soul, whatever you believe, back to the environment to help nourish and create further generations. So to me, the symbolization, and you're right, that's why I chose this. It wasn't just because I was like, ooh, they found something, but it's because how they
Old dead
humanized
humans. No, it's like, no, this is like old people, old people with remorse, with sadness, with
empathy.
respect, and I mean, just like these are complex emotions that were happening a long time ago. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we all like to say are real human traits. No, it's intense.
Yeah. In the nice thing about this, no matter what you believe in, this demonstrates that as we evolve, we've had certain nurturing, certain aspects. We were not all just these wild animals. And I'm starting to make a case why we should just be vegetarian. It's a really hard thing for me, but if you watch how
It happens.
animals nurture their young and all these things, you relate it to where you're at. And some of me has had a hard time with that, especially in recent years. I mean, I like meat. Don't get me wrong, I do, but you just taking the life of something else, you really have to feel that you're higher in that food chain, that you're worth more, that all these other things to get that. And sometimes for me, it's a hard justification, I guess.
As a person who I had chili Thai food for 2 dinners and then lunch today, so but it was tofu. So
just on your guys' topic of the emotion behind it, when you said that, I'm like, oh my god, I was transported back to a time I was hearing listening to discussion about the Tong child, the Australopithecus africanus, that had like the eagle claw marks in its skull. And I can't remember who I was listening to as they were talking about it. I think it would have been in a book, and they're talking about it and saying, and just imagining the poor child being ripped away from its mother. And I remember standing there listening to this going, oh, that was tens of thousands of years ago, or millions of years ago. And it still was gutting. So, it's our ancestors, but yeah, it's kind of, you're right. Like we kind of build that bond and that connection, and we see that linear, or that camaraderie, I guess is the word I would go for.
Yeah, we have at the local Cleveland Natural History Museum, they have Lucy, the Australopithecus. She's the most complete. She's the most complete skeletal remains found of that particular generation, and like I had the little girls next to it and everything, and like they're not too much bigger or different, so it's pretty intense. It's pretty cool. For my quick save, it's definitely a lot lighter and lighthearted. So I work with a bunch of people, a couple of people from Nepal, and they make fun of me and a variety of ways, and this is probably the most intense way. So like this picture here, drinking water but not suitable for European stomach. I just translate European stomach to white human Caucasian whatever stomach, because as you guys know, I sent Chris a batch of peppers last year, but I grow super spicy peppers, super hots, and the ghost chilies, the Scotch brain strains, Scotch bonnets. I throw them all on there. So I pulled out the hottest of the hot, the heat masters, and I took them in. And there's a brother and sister from Nepal, and I'm just like, what do you guys got? Is this hot? And I took a slice, the thinnest damn slice I could cut on a knife, and I put that thing in my mouth, and I needed 15 minutes of silence. I needed to be alone in a room, just coming to grips with my life. They bit into it like it was a yellow pepper at a pizza parlor, and they were like, "This doesn't taste so good." I don't know, it's kind of spicy, but it just doesn't. The flavor is not there. And I'm like, "You are superhumans. You don't belong on this planet. You're from another solar system." And my first thought when seeing this image was like, drinking water but not suitable for European stomach. That is totally something a Nepalese person would say, because they're like, "Yes, we climb mountains, and your weak American stomachs are pathetic." It's just like multiple levels of meaning in that image, but it's just like I've never seen someone bite into a yellow ghost chili and go, like half the pepper and seeds and all. Just I don't know.
The seeds is what gets me.
Well, see, with the ghost chili, once you get to a certain level, like once you're beyond the habanero, like the capsaicin is actually inside the flesh as well. And so like habaneros, bell peppers, and that kind of stuff, when you get the seeds and rinds in there, and then once you start getting into super hot territory, even the flesh has capsaicin. You throw the seeds and rinds in there, and it's just a murder sauce. And they just bit into the whole pepper, just a fresh pepper out of the garden, like they were eating a carrot, and they were like, "Yeah, it's not bad. I don't really like the taste." That would have reduced all three of us to quivering, snotty messes on the floor if we had done that same thing. Like this tiny little woman, she was just like, "Yeah, I don't know, not really." I just crush every bit of ego I had. She's just way more of a true fighting human than I will ever be.
Well, and I think that's the larger thing, right? Is that whole dilemma of some sort,
I have an evolutionary perspective of it. I honestly think that there is a thing where if you looked at evolution, if you looked at like the people in a society in an area, we don't have much food to eat, but some of the food we have to eat is super hot peppers. We need to eat, we need calories. So the humans that could eat it, who weren't in absolute and utter pain, could actually survive on those peppers. They developed a genetic resistance to the capsaicin, and they could survive. And so I honestly do think that there's a little bit of a evolutionary trait to certain people that can eat something and just be immune to certain levels of capsaicin, kind of like birds who don't have the receptors.
Yeah.
Working on this concept, I have never seen it anywhere in any kind of literature, but it makes logical sense. I'm probably completely wrong.
Well, I mean,
we'll
there's people who have different ratio, who have color blindness, we'll say, so they're unable to detect certain colors in the visible light spectrum.
Like Kentuckians who are gray.
There are super testers. There you go. There are super tasters, and so it's not flawed logic, I don't think. I mean, yeah, it merits like actually looking into it, but yeah, that's I don't see anything overly.
When Solar Skeptics is the grant, I'll let you guys know, and we'll start working on it.
Can't wait.
There you go. Well, anyway, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We will be back next week with another amazing episode of Cellular Skeptics. We have I don't know, some cool stuff in the works. We might be looking at partnering with some other organizations again. We'll be definitely having Boyce back on here in the next couple of weeks as well to go through some of the Yang breakdown for New York Mayor. And we will be looking at a breakdown again of some of the failed arguments for Republicans and Trump. With that being said, thank you all so much. Have a good night, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics.
Yay!